what's the business value of a Scrum Master? It's not an easy question to answer, and it depends on the organisation and what they expect of you. So setting those expectations early with your client or your customer is really important. Understanding what they think you're there to do, and then either correcting them or agreeing with them, and then asking them, how do we measure that, my input? I think if it comes from the customer or the client, you're in a good position then, because you can say, well, we've met this. The team are there now.
Afternoon, Wayne.
Hey Jack, how you doing?
Good, mate. Post-lunch podcast slot.
Yep. So
we'll bring the energy back up. I'm going to rip off your LinkedIn profile and tell by your face whether that's the true reflection of where we're at. So Wayne Smallman, a Scrum Master who's not just good at retros. We'll dig into that in a bit.
Yeah.
And founder of MilScrum, whose tagline is "Where agility meets the military." Off the back of that, I mean, the clue's in the name, really. You spent 10 years or just over 10 years in the British Army, leaving in 2015. Is that all true so far?
True so far. Guilty.
Apart from that, who is Wayne Smallman? What else have you got lurking?
I think in the bio it talks a lot about me being a parent and principles that's been formed over kind of that period of my life, which is certainly different to the principles I probably had when I was serving. And yeah, as a father is my first and foremost job, then husband for 8 years. 7 days ago, so celebrated their 9th anniversary. And as I said in my kind of introduction a bit, is Scrum Master who's not just good at retros.
What does that mean?
So it means I think there's a perception from this kind of Scrum community that the retrospective is the Scrum Master's event, whereas it's you're accountable for the team's effectiveness. So I dig a little deeper into that and talk about kind of not just team health, but how effective they are through different processes and conversations, facilitating all of the events in the same level of expectation as I would the retrospective.
Yeah. All right. We'll dive back into that in a bit. But the important question: £5 in Poundland.
Yeah.
What are you getting?
As I said, father first, so I've got to get some bubbles.
Yeah, bubbles.
And some Haribo for myself to keep
all
my energy levels up while I'm at the park with the kids, probably.
Anything else?
I think that's what you get.
You're up north now, mate.
So okay, you get more for your money. It's actually £1 for a pack of Haribos. Probably a bottle of water as well, just to maintain hydration.
No Post-its.
No Post-its.
Not
from Poundland, do it.
Oh yeah, true. In terms of your journey, could you just tell us a bit more how you got to the point of sort of sitting here today talking about Scrum, etc.
So, as you mentioned, served for 10.5 years in the military, in the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers as a vehicle mechanic.
Yeah.
Reached the dizzy heights of section commander, which is a corporal in military terms. But essentially, I was a team lead, of about 12 people. I left just over 8 years ago now. And
Why'd you leave?
I wanted to start a family, and I never wanted to travel much while I had the family. Ironically, I joined a job as an international service engineer.
Okay.
And I probably travelled more in those 4 years than I did in the 10 years I was serving.
And was that doing more or less the same job as you were when you were in?
No, I was kind of back to being a team member. Travelling, I was in the UK. I'd be testing, helping build, test, install and commission large production machinery.
Okay, yeah.
That made lead acid batteries for cars, golf cart power storage, all those types of things. I did that for about 4 years, and looked around me and I was like, I don't want to be doing this for the rest of my life. Although it was enjoyable, I enjoyed the travel, the work was complex and technical. I wanted to be kind of back leading teams, supporting them to be more effective, as mentioned as a Scrum Master. And I also wanted some element of input into the product, not from a technical input, but like from a kind of helping the team deliver that, as well as interacting with customers. So I thought about it, and I joined the sales team in the same company, selling the equipment, which was really good because I could interact with all the stakeholders from conception, literally from purchase all the way to in service and after sales.
Yeah.
So that was really good commercial experience for me. But sales was not my forte, and I could sell the product because I understood the customer's problems. But I had no say on how the product was developed. I could just sell something off the shelf. So I thought this is when I kind of started studying business management. I also picked up the Scrum guide, and I read the Scrum guide. I was like, this is very familiar. So I started kind of retrospectively applying the practices of Scrum and other Agile kind of principles into my time in the services, time as a service engineer, and then as I moved into sales, so that's stakeholder interactions and communication. So I thought I can influence a product by becoming a project manager, which was kind of true. So I looked for a job, found a job as a project manager. I did that for a year, but I did find myself updating a lot of plans. I didn't have much say over the product. It was a set of requirements I had to deliver against. And I thought it's time to hit the road, put some rubber to the road now, and do something I think I'm really passionate about, which was Scrum.
Yeah.
So I spoke with my network, and I managed to land the job at MBDA as a permanent employee as a Scrum Master, which was a great opportunity for me to learn in a complex environment and gain some much needed experience of practicing the craft.
And what were the differences in your mind? Word this correctly. Project management, Scrum Mastery.
Yeah.
Why do you think you veered towards the Scrum Master route or the Agile practitioner route?
So there's three things for me. I wanted to work closely with teams. I wanted some input into the product, and I wanted to work with stakeholders, whether that's internal to the organization or the users of that product. And in my experience as a project manager, which was very short, a year, I didn't get much of that. I did get some interaction, but it was more of a service delivery manager role, which was, I guess, there's some similarity between being a Scrum Master and a service delivery manager. But I wanted to apply it from a Scrum perspective, not as is, but as best it can be, with some of my own niche and thing on the side of it.
And what do you think? Feel free to go as deep into this as you want, but why do you think service leavers? I think marketing's part of it, but there's a lot of service leavers that have an affinity or become attracted to either the Agile environment or the Scrum Master role or something of that nature. What, in your mind, what do you think the reasons are for that?
I think there's various trends of when people are leaving and what's going on in the outside industry at the time. Particularly for REME people, when I was leaving, they were like, "Let's go on the rigs, let's go in to work on the oil rigs, earn loads of money. We're used to traveling and being away from home, so it just suits us." That wasn't something I wanted to do, but I did end up traveling away quite a lot, and use my engineering skills as a soft landing, I guess it was. For me, and then. I thought it's like kind of trend from the REME particularly, and engineers from the service leavers in general, were kind of moving towards the wind turbine as the oil rigs were closing down. So, and then I've seen a much more bigger trend going towards project management the last couple of years. And as I've noticed that defence and kind of government workers are working towards kind of agile ways of working, which is crazy because it's been around for such a long time as well, right? But they're just moving towards that market. It's a natural. They know the environment they're going into, so maybe it's a bit of a soft landing, but it's still challenging. And that's maybe the bit that people don't understand or appreciate when they are moving into the environments.
What do you mean by that?
Just with
what are the challenges?
So I've posted a bit about this on LinkedIn in regards to kind of the challenges of utilising Agile in defence, which is hardware centric generally. You don't always have access to stakeholders. The commercial aspect of it is difficult because it's still very traditional in regards to you bid for a year or 2 years worth of work. But I have seen and been part of projects that are delivered in an agile way by doing at the minimum they can, first of all, with a small exercise and then scaling that up to a company level.
Yeah.
And that really worked, but it's scary for the supplier of that, because there are commercial risks. There's POs lastminute.com, and it's frustrating from that perspective.
Yeah. What are the tangible things? Because there may be people watching this or listening to it who are after tangible. What did you do specifically? And you can only speak from your experience to land that first Scrum Master position. I know you were a project manager before, so there was some experience, but how did you go about it? How did you go about it?
So I studied it for, as mentioned, I picked it up about 4.5 years ago, and I studied it quite a lot. It was the old Scrum Guide. I
was going to say, and then they changed it.
Yeah, and then they changed it, so I had to kind of change my words, especially for when I did my PSM1 exam, or assessment. And I retrospectively applied it a lot to everything. So when I was at TBS Engineering, we had to develop the machines were in development to increase the output of the machine, and certain parts of the machine couldn't keep up, so we had to rig up something on the machine, which was essentially an MVP. It was ugly. We plumbed it in with a motor off the shelf with some dodgy electrics and some not specified pipe work to do that, to cool the what the machine was putting out, and that was our MVP, and it worked. We managed to get the cycle time that they were after, so it achieved the output. It was an MVP. We brought the designers out saying, "We've solved this problem. Can you make it look aesthetically pleasing?" And they took it away. So that was where development ended, and then business as usual took over. Then, so it went back into design phase, into that blend between agile and traditional, which was a very traditional company. It was very much sell, hand over to design, build, test, deliver. And they could have learned a lot from agile practices when they were developing that machine.
And you introduced that. That's how you sort
of unintentionally.
Yeah.
It wasn't a lot of the practices and things I've done. I hear play back to me from someone who's been in the industry. Well, I'm like, well, I did that almost naturally.
Yeah.
Or unintentionally.
I suppose if I'm a service leaver now and I say, Wayne, you landed your first Scrum Master job, how did you go about it?
Mm-hmm.
Is there, you start here and you end up there, or is it just you just slogged it out and just started interacting with certain people? Is there any,
I think networking, speaking with people like yourself and other kind of agile experts, do you know what I mean, or people that are kind of in the industry?
Put me in that bracket.
But I think speaking with people in your network is very important, and LinkedIn's a brilliant thing. It wasn't a thing 8 years ago when I left, or it was, but it wasn't used to the extent it is now. I think that's kind of how I got my project management job, and it's how I got my job at MBDA, and it's pretty much how I landed my first contract as a contractor. So that's a massively important thing for any service leaver.
Are there any things you thought we'll talk about LinkedIn specifically first, but is there anything where you've gone, probably wouldn't have done that in retrospect? Like made us like commenting on people and
I think initially when I kind of found out about LinkedIn and started using it a bit more, I was probably too active, and something I've got my mentor kind of guiding me is like, to what end? Why are you doing this? Why are you posting? So it made me think about it a bit more. So I was a bit more sparing with my thoughts and actually sat on them sometimes rather than just put them straight out there to be criticised. And I think that's a trap some like service leaders can like a wagging tail on a dog a bit, that you get excited, so you want to kind of put your thoughts and feelings out there, but there's a lot of trolls and people out there who will just hammer you back down and knock your confidence. So that might detract from pursuing that career. But it also might make your thinking a bit more robust as well.
And you also don't, like, sometimes, not you, but one is being a dick. And if you're not just a service leaver, if you've got that open to work banner on and you're being objectively negative or ripping someone apart, that's not going to look good. If there's a recruiter looking and going, that individual's got open to work, but they've been a right knobhead here, I'll move on.
And you've got to maintain that professional front, haven't you? It's a professional platform first and foremost. You can have fun with it like you do. So use it for what it is. It's not it's not a social networking, it's a professional networking
Got to
site.
play the game, haven't you?
Absolutely, yeah.
And I like, yeah.
I think I've refined that over probably the last year of what I kind of put out there.
I'll go on. Tell us more about that.
What do you mean, as in what I put out there?
Yeah, just I think, yeah, but on the journey, from the excited service leaver to thinking,
Yeah.
So
I didn't use it immediately. Obviously, I mentioned it wasn't really a thing when I first left, but probably posting too much, and I had some stuff played back to me once, and it was a bit humbling and a bit like, what are you saying? Like, I'm still allowed to post. It's my social channel.
Yeah.
And I took it quite badly until I sat down with my wife and my mentor, and they played it back to me like, yeah, that doesn't really make sense, or it's not very good. So having those people I know they're in my corner, I took that feedback on board and refined it so it's more constructive. I'm looking to share my thoughts, but enlighten someone or make someone's life easier.
I think you're a really good writer on there.
Okay.
To be honest,
I think it's definitely improved over the last year. So
I
appreciate that. Thank you.
But I think in general, it's very clear, very concise,
cool,
and very very good.
But I think going back to answer your question, really is learn about it, practice it retrospectively or in your current job, and then speak with people about it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you'll find a role.
MilScrum.
What's
that about? And what were the motivations behind that? Without leading you too much, but it's there for you to it's there on your profile.
Yeah,
family's very important.
Yeah,
it was that.
Yeah, so like the cheesy slogan, it is where agility meets the military. We want to apply agile practices within any industry where we can, where it's appropriate, but also influence certain like military practices and procedures, such as like there's one that is like I speak about quite often with people is the 1 up and 2 up intent, which is if you're within a team, you'll know your boss's intent and their boss's intent, so you'll have good situation awareness of decisions you make, as long as they're in that line in a hierarchical organization, that you're not going to be far off the wrong decision. And that works its way up, so your bosses should know their directors' intent, etc. And that overall improves communication throughout an organization. That's a very simple one to apply, but you can apply the principles of war, which I believe there are 10 of. There's, depending what day you Google, there's sometimes 7, there's sometimes 9, there's sometimes 10. But those applied in principle in business are really effective. And some of the conversations I've had with military service leavers or people I've worked with who have served in the military and are in the agile environment.
And what was the motivation behind starting this venture?
A bit of kind of freedom, I guess, to choose where and who I work with, and also kind of give my family a bit of freedom as a family man first. If I need to take a day off because my wife's stressed out with the kids, where she's been with them every day of the week, I can choose to do so. Obviously, I don't get paid, but it's a choice I make to improve the lifestyle of my family.
Yeah. And where do you see it? Like, where is it going to, like, what's the, if you have got one, what's the, Agile doesn't like plans, blah, blah, blah. But
what's my vision?
What's the vision, yeah.
So as you'll see on the website, milscrum.co.uk, plug.
I'll link it in the comments.
I offer 2 types of services, development and delivery. My delivery services are placement of people, a team, or to develop products offline. A lot of organizations struggle with that, to kind of step away from their business as usual and develop their products. So placing a team to do that for them, where they can interact with their customers on their behalf, bring back some feedback, and then go away and develop something very quickly. That's kind of one of those services, those delivery services, as well as people placements, where they've got maybe maternity cover or paternity cover, where they need someone just to cover someone for a short period of time, or just to stand in because they're missing that skill. And then process and flow analysis. So having someone, a professional, to come in and analyze their processes, give them a kind of report, and if we could make these changes, or just hold that mirror up to say this is a problem. We can help with that problem as well. But ideally, we want those answers to come from the customer to solve the problem. They've got skin in the game.
Yeah. And what have you found positive and negative so far in terms of you've left that permanent. No job's ever permanent, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Permanent employment, safety nets.
Yeah. So
You had any
learning
wobbles?
curve
Yeah.
to starting up a business is huge. Having the right people around you to kind of advise and guide you. I support yourself, my mentor, other people that I know have gone contracting. So that's really helpful just to kind of understand the difference between outside and inside IR35. All those little lessons, that's been a steep learning curve. But one I've really enjoyed. Bit of marketing recently, utilizing like getting my creative side out, which I've really enjoyed, and posting a bit more company content rather than my own. So that's kind of just starting off in a bit of a slow burn. I'm not expecting 100 emails in my inbox overnight, but start small with it really, and move from there.
Has it been an adjustment at home?
Because
yeah, you know.
Yeah, so previously I was working a compressed working week, which were long hours, and then my wife would, on the day off I had in the middle of the week, would go to work, and then I'll have the kids, and then I'd have them one day of the weekend as well. So we only had one family day a week really, which is not suitable for me or my family or my kids. So it's taken my wife some adjustment more than me probably to kind of step away from work and take on that home role as well. So which is a conscious choice she's made, and we work together as a partnership. So that's how it works best for us and our family.
Yeah. So from army, sort of sticking to what you did after leaving, but back in a team, project management to Scrum Master to business owner.
Yeah.
In quite a short space of time. Was there ever a point where where it started to take its toll? Like, has it been relatively smooth sailing?
Yeah. I think adding the family to that mix as well is a lot of pressure, and I think something that maybe men don't talk about as much, but it is a stress. You have a family to provide for if you're the breadwinner in that family, and sometimes not being able to switch off when you get home. And just go from solving people's problems or helping people solve their problems, to kind of being emotionally drained and getting home and then having to switch on and be a positive dad is difficult sometimes, and I don't always get it right. So kind of that was an adjustment. I think that kind of goes down the route of your question.
Yeah. I think it's just important to recognise that it's not just all.
It's
you leave the army or wherever or whatever job and.
Yeah,
you go contracting.
I certainly had low points. Kind of leaving the army initially, like I had a purpose. Like it was service in that sense to the kind of the army and the country. In that sense, or as cheesy as it sounds, that was what I was doing.
Yeah, living the dream, serving the Queen, and all that.
Big boys club in that sense, and I lost a lot of that kind of camaraderie. Even though the people I was working with were friends, I would call them, and I got on with them. It wasn't the same. So I think leaving that initially was a big adjustment. And it probably took me, I think I said to you before, it took me 3 months after getting out of not getting out of my car in the car park in my civilian job to stop checking for my berry. Like it was like muscle memory. It was really, really strange. So, but yeah, like just those kind of not having fitness in the morning. Like not that I do it now, but
it's an option.
It's an option. Yeah. So yeah.
So you mentioned the 1-up, 2-up thing before.
Yeah.
Are there any other sort of military characteristics that you think overlap with, agile ways of working and working in those cross-functional teams?
Yeah. I mean, in my time as a junior non-commissioned officer, I didn't really ever see a plan written down, like into the detail I see in civil life. So you kind of took the initiative. You had a reason for being there. And it was a good conversation I had with, I don't know if you've come across Tom Apps before. He's a really interesting character, and I had a good conversation with him once. We talked about when you're sat in the airport with your burger and your webbing and your helmet, and this is me talking from like a REMF perspective.
Yeah.
You can put the abbreviation what that is in the chat. But so when you're sat there and you're thinking about what you're going to be doing, and what you're trying to achieve there. You always knew why.
Mm.
And I was like, yeah, that's really important. You knew why you was going there, but you didn't know what you was going to do. You didn't know what tools you were going to have, but you're all cross-functionally trained. And I think that's something I was watching the David Bishop
Oh
conversation he
yeah, yeah.
had, and he talked about cross-functional teams. So military is truly cross-functional as a section.
Mm.
So you all go through basic military training. I think that's something organizations could learn, is when people join their organization, going through a baseline of information that they need to know to be effective in that organization.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're all radio trained, weapon trained, fit, healthy, dentist, doctor, all of the above. Like we can do a lot of things. We're not
Yeah.
experts in those fields, but you do have experts attached then sometimes to a section, like a medic or a radio operator or a mechanic.
That's interesting, because I was reading something yesterday that just sprung to mind about the cybersecurity and them struggling with bringing people in. And I was looking at the comments, as you do, and people saying, well, this whole soldier first mentality might not be the best if you want someone who's really good at cybersecurity.
Yeah.
Like, does it go too, this isn't a question for you, but then they were questioning, does it go too far? Because you can't, if someone who's really interested in cybersecurity may not be the best soldier.
Yeah, yeah.
Or the best sailor or air person. So
yeah,
it's a...
So the REMI core motto was Arte et Marte, which is Latin for by skill and by fighting.
Okay.
And it was tradesman first, soldier always, I think. Soldier first, tradesman always. I can't remember which way it was around. But essentially by skill and by fighting. So we have a technical skill, but we're also soldiers.
Yeah.
Again, there's a balance between the type of people. Sometimes people that are very good at mechanic weren't always the best soldiers, but someone very good at soldiering weren't always the best mechanics. Some people very good at fitness weren't always the best mechanics either, and vice versa. You have a niche and a bias, probably.
Yeah. It's finding the balance, I think, like you said, isn't it?
I think it's the attributes that you kind of get, like being able to work in teams, that make you a better team member.
Yeah. Yeah.
Communication, for one, is a massive part. I think a massive attribute that a lot of service leavers bring with them into civil life.
Yeah, I think having those basics, it's fun. There's nothing wrong with that. Everyone doing basic training, that's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
But recognizing that if you back to that cybersecurity example, you want people who are switched on on that, and probably have spent the majority of their, either teenage lives or education in front of a computer in a dark room.
Yeah, but I guess in a Scrum environment, you don't want people solving problems on their own either.
No.
You want them to be able to communicate and work within a team.
Yeah, and that's the balance.
Yeah, exactly. That's the balance, isn't it?
It's interesting, isn't it? From what you've seen so far, back to the whole Agile thing, where have you seen organisations sort of go a tiny bit wrong, and what were the reasons behind that? I say wrong, but where have the challenges been? Yeah,
it's certainly a mindset change. It's like people think of the military and think about a command and control structure, but when you're at a section level and the youngest guy or girl in the team has got the best idea, you're going to run with that, as long as everyone acknowledges that that's the best idea, and we're going to run with that. So it's not as, you do get some autonomy, not always. Sometimes you have to say, get over there and do that, because it's the nature of the beast and lives depend on it. In kind of organizations that I've seen it not work as well, or just applying kind of processes and thoughts in my mind in the evenings or weekends and stuff like that. I think just be an enabler, like your job in an agile environment. If you're not part of the team, is an enabler. You should be enabling that team to be able to deliver effectively, removing the impediments, refining processes, so it's easier for people to do stuff rather than putting barriers in people's ways.
As a Scrum Master, how do you balance that between becoming the admin? In your experience, obviously.
Yeah, it's very difficult, and you can easily fall into that trap, and I have in times where, like, you're the Jira jockey or whatever, and that's not, so it is painted in a bad light, but sometimes if that helps the team be more effective, but then if you left the team or you got hit by a bus, where's that dependency gone? And so you do need to distribute that load. But when you're starting with an immature team, I don't mean childish, I mean immature in kind of development of Scrum, you probably want to ease them into that and maybe take the reins of it first of all, and then do some working sessions with them so they can kind of explain, demonstrate, imitate, practice, a very common military teaching method.
Yeah. Another thing that comes up from a Scrum Master accountability point of view is measuring success and improvements. Obviously, most roles or accountabilities in organizations get measured.
Yeah.
How do you think how can a Scrum Master be?
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm so cautious with using the term measured, because that's what it is.
It's a dirty word sometimes, isn't it, to a lot of people in our industry. So it's difficult. I think particularly like in defense or government work, you don't have those tools readily available, or you can't use third party software to do that either. Some good ones that I kind of you recommend is like the Liberators, the Scrum Team Survey. Another one is Echometer app, where you can kind of really build a good picture of stuff. But again, it's can you use them in your environment?
Yeah.
Yes, maybe no.
Why do you think there is a reluctance from like a Scrum Master community to sort of show? I don't want to use the word justify, but that's essentially sometimes in an organization, Agile is an experiment which then needs to be justified because someone's paying for it, especially in your world where you're working with, government money, public money. Essentially taxpayers' money.
Yeah.
Like, why do you think there is such a reluctance to keep the receipts?
Yeah. I guess you hear people talk about velocity and then like you're comparing teams and stuff. But I've never actually witnessed that. I've never saw or heard anybody say, well, this team's got 100 story points and that team's got 150 points. Why are you not got 150? Why have you not got 150? I've never actually witnessed that. So I'm not too fussed about that. And I had a good conversation with a guy called Dan on LinkedIn about this. I can't remember his surname, but talked about like the free measurements. I was like, if you have access to stakeholders, you can get a customer rating. That's a really good one. I think if the customer's happy, you're doing a good job. Your kind of product rating, whether it's an app on an app on like Play Store or something, like you can measure the impact of that. Throughput and velocity, I think both backwards looking metrics.
I was going to say, I when you were talking about like the product and the customer, that's fine from a product point of view.
Yeah.
But then it's how.
Yeah, are the team getting flogged to get that?
Yeah, and if the Scrum Master disappeared, would that still be the same?
Yeah.
Yes or no?
Yeah.
Like it's there's sometimes
from a Scrum Master, how am I measured then?
Yeah.
I think you can measure team health. You can measure that kind of team output and outcomes, but again, that's down to the team as well. Kind of delivering. It's a very difficult thing to measure. I think of how effective you are, or is it the team just being very good?
Yeah.
I mean, it ebbs and flows between different types of maturity of teams. I could go into a really good Scrum, a very mature Scrum team, and look amazing, but maybe not required as much. Whereas not look as good going into an immature team.
Yeah.
So I think team happiness is a good one, but you don't want to always focus on their happiness, because a good explanation of that is I saw someone talk about it. It was an officer on talking about it and said that I could give each of my soldiers £50 and a lift £50 to go to the pub and go and have drinks, but then they'd moan about not being able to get to the pub. So you can't measure their happiness in that sense. So don't try and make them happy. Just try and make their environment nice to work within.
Yeah.
Because asking those deep questions, really.
Yeah.
And you just got. I guess it's just it's not a finger in the air, but it's a feeling rather than a measurement. So it's difficult to measure the Scrum Master input to a team, I think. But you could baseline. You could say baseline the product rating, this, and this, and say that's where we started. Since I've joined the team, at this point, the product rating's gone up. The customer rating is happier. They're happier. The team health is happier. There's more flow through the team. We're getting more stuff done.
It's just getting people to do it. I found
exactly,
quite difficult. I've always struggled with why wouldn't you want to keep the receipts, because it looks good on you.
Yeah.
If you've got this rolling commentary of all of this work to back it up that you and the team have done.
Yeah.
And it's probably me. I don't understand why people wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Unless they're not doing it.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those.
Transparency, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's one of those. I'm going to call it a role. I know the Scrum Guide says accountability before anyone starts. But you're going to be put under the microscope at times.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
and a good question my mentor asked me is, what's the business value of a Scrum Master?
yeah,
Like, what is it? And it's not an easy question to answer, and it depends on the organization and what they expect of you. So setting those expectations early with your client or your customer is really important. Understanding what they think you're there to do, and then either correcting them or agreeing with them.
yeah,
And then asking them, how do we measure that, my input then?
yeah,
And then I think if it comes from the customer or the client, you're in a good position then, because you can say, well, we've met this, the team are there now,
yeah.
can I move on to my next contract, or can I move to a different team?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. I've brought the team to this far. They probably need some light touch
Yeah.
interaction. But where else can I go?
Yeah.
Or, where in the organization needs my help next? Apart from focusing on Agile, where should people be focusing on outside of that sort of bubble in your experience? Where do you draw inspiration from? Is a simpler way of asking that.
I think communication is that key thing, and it sounds cliche and everything, and everyone just takes it as a given. A recent post from my MilScrum thing is, how good are you at communication? And everyone always answers, yeah, I'm okay. But communication is body language, it's listening, it's talking, it's how you communicate, whether that's through a podcast or whether that's through a voice recording. There's lots of different ways to communicate, and I think that challenged a lot of people, especially during COVID and things like that, being having to not being in the room with people, and you're used to reading body language and other things. So that challenged people's communication styles. So that's something I think people really need to work on, regardless of what approach you take to delivering or developing your product or your teams.
Yeah. Where do you draw inspiration from? Music, books? What
My kids,
Yeah,
massively.
okay.
It's so hard to I had to sit down with I was speaking to you about it just before this podcast. Let's sit down with my daughter in Smith's yesterday, trying to explain to her that she didn't have enough money to buy the doll she wants and the clothes she wants for the doll. And she just didn't get it. She's like, I was like, okay, this one you can have, and this one you can't, and you can't have this with it. She's like, but what about this doll? And then we was like, okay. I said, look at that doll. I said, that has got the clothes with it, and it's got the doll, and you've got you've got what you want, but it's within your budget. She's only 4, mind. So she sat down on the floor, getting quite upset. I gave her the space to kind of have those feelings and feel the emotions, and she sat down after, and she come back to me and was like, I think I want this one. I was like, okay, well, now we've got to go get your friend something as well, because it's a birthday party this weekend. So we went around there. She's like, but she's going to get more dolls than me. I'm like, yeah, but they're only £5 each. You've got this. And she just having that conversation. If you can communicate with a 4-year-old in a toy shop, you can communicate fairly well, I think, in general.
Yeah.
And it's pretty high pressure when a kid's screaming at you in the middle of the shop. I have walked out there with my 2-year-old with a baby doll, a crib, a pushchair, a high chair, and clothes once.
All for a doll?
Well, we only went in there to get a little something.
Oh, okay.
So she ended up, that was
just
two.
Imagine you pushing this little pram with a dolly in it. Is there anything you've changed your mind about recently that you never thought you would? And this can be Agile related or a bit broader if you want, but Agile's fine.
Yeah, I think when I first picked up the Scrum Guide and I read it, I was maybe a bit of an evangelist. I thought I could apply it to anything. But I've tried to soften my language a lot more recently, and let's not talk about it as Scrum. Let's talk about it as delivery and development. We're not Scrum is just a name and a label to wrap around it. So I've changed the way I approach the subject, talking about it as much as I can. There's obviously certain points where you talk the jargon because that's what people understand.
Yeah.
But I think softening the language is really important. I've tried to change my mind on how I can do some fitness, but I bought a kettlebell about 2 weeks ago. It was 12 kilos and I still can't lift it. So it's still been on my bedroom floor for 2 weeks. So I've certainly not changed my mind on that yet.
Door stopper.
But
you think that'll get easier though with I don't know, on paper being a bit more
Yeah,
free?
I think so. As my first contract, I'm hyper focused on that
Mm.
and making that sing at the moment. And I want that to be my baseline, like where I go from there. And kind of my first reference in that sense. So
You
yeah,
got to find, or one has to find their minimum effective dose.
yeah,
You know, the, the if you probably, again, correct me, but you probably can't go running six. I'm using running as an example, but you probably can't do exercise 6 days a week.
yeah,
2 is probably enough for
yeah,
now. That's like what's the minimum effective dose of whatever.
yeah. And
Like, yeah, go on.
yeah, sorry. For me, it's like getting out, walking, like hiking. I'm there going out and walking with my friends, and we did a Lake District back in Easter,
Yeah,
just for we tried to do like
I remember
24
you
miles,
saying,
and we ended up only doing about 10 because we were absolutely hanging out. But it was like it's like when I'm up high in the mountains. Just to be clear,
yeah,
when I'm in the mountains, I feel like you look out and everything's smaller, so you just feel less relevant in the universe.
mm.
So it's like the big problems are tiny up there.
Yeah,
So for me, that's a kind of, and again, it's from my mentorship. Is like we talk about charges and depletions. So we think of yourself as a battery, and this is a metaphor I use my team in like the start of our retrospectives. Like where's everyone's head's at? What's depleting us? What's charging us? And that's a charge for me. And depletion is like when I can't make my kids happier, or not happier, but enjoy life. So
you've mentioned mentorship quite a
mhm.
lot. Um, what have you got from that, and what should people look for in a mentor, whether paid or free, or
Yeah.
you know?
So I'm very lucky. My mentor's a guy I knew from when I was 14, gentleman from Zimbabwe, like, and he treats me like a mentee. He doesn't treat me like a friend or a trainee. He treats me like a mentee, and he's quite hard on me sometimes when I need to be. When I, like I said, that tail with a dog with a wagging tail,
Mm.
and he pulled me back in a bit and challenge me. But I think challenge is the biggest thing you want from a mentor, is someone to question your thoughts and opinions so they're more robust, before you go spouting off about them on LinkedIn and things like that. But just in general, he's been instrumental in my kind of pivot from engineering into kind of team development and delivery.
Yeah.
So that's been massive. Just things like mental health space. I mean, it's good being a good coach for my business management degree as well. So yeah, really helpful in that sense.
And did you reach out to him, or was like, I suppose I'm sitting here as someone watching.
Yeah.
Like, how did you even go about saying, do you want to be my mentor? Do you
Yeah.
want to be my boyfriend?
It sounds really cheesy, doesn't it? But yeah, it was I can't remember how we got really in touch. He was my dad's friend, a long time ago, and they're still my friends, but they're kind of drifted apart.
Yeah,
Whereas we kind of I think we met at a Skittles night where my dad used to play Skittles, and this guy played in the same team. So we started talking about me moving into sales. He's like, oh, okay, I was in
okay.
sales. So he started, I wanted to be the best salesperson I could be. So we started mentoring that thing. I said, well, I'm changing my mind now towards project management. He said, oh, change your mind again. So gives me challenges all the time, which is good.
Do you think everyone should have a mentor?
I don't think it would hurt someone to challenge you.
Mm.
It's never a bad thing, but you've got to be open to it.
Yeah.
At first, I wasn't. He called me arrogant and egotistical, and I was like, it's quite humbling.
How come? What led into that conclusion?
I think
Because that's not something I would have ever associated
no,
with you.
and so, I mean, we've known each other for the last couple of years, I think. So I'm very different to. I talk about myself, me, myself, and I.
Okay.
And when like leaving the forces, I think we like to think we're very good problem solvers and
Right.
like masters of with a jack of all trades, master of none. And I thought I could like smash out project management, smash out sales. And he's like, you've got to stop saying that. And he's like, stop saying I'm going to smash it out, because it's not. You can't just smash out everything. I was a very good soldier, I think, personally, and I was a good
Smashed it out.
Yeah, smashed it out, but I didn't smash it out. That was built over 10.5 years of. I was absolutely shocking at soldiering. I was absolutely shocking as a vehicle mechanic when I first started. But over 10 years, I honed my craft so I could coach and teach. And I kind of left the military thinking, I can just go and do that as a project manager. And it's not. You have to hone your craft over X amount of years.
Yeah, I think that's. Yeah, do you think that's where people? And this isn't a slight, because I think I'd be lying if I hadn't done it myself. People leaving the military, because the military is 2-day courses
Yeah.
equals expert, because you just get flung into it.
Yeah. And you
Do you-
learn like baptisms of fire type of thing.
Yeah, but do you think that's where people sometimes fall into the trap and then get humbled because they've done their 2-day Prince 2?
So I call it a whiteboard moment.
Yeah.
And that was based on an interview I had for my project management job. And I read this statement of work and I was reading through it. I was like, I don't understand these acronyms.
Yeah.
I was like, I thought I did because I'd been studying it a bit and I read a bit about it and I had some conversations with my mentor. I was like, yeah. And this is where a mentor really helped. Like he allowed me to fail, like,
Yeah.
but he also brought me back up again. So I stood in front, I had to read, I now had to read through a statement of work and come up with a project management plan basically initially. So I stood in front of this whiteboard with a pen and I didn't know what to write on there. And they were all, the interviewers panel was sat there talking to me. And luckily the outgoing project manager was really helpful. He talked about it. He says, so what do you do when you've sold something, you bring it back to the design team? Oh, you have a kickoff meeting. I was like, okay, cool. That's a project initiation document. Okay, I'm going to start that.
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
went through the kind of the process of the plans. And he helped me out, thankfully. And I did get a job based on my charisma and my kind of personality traits, I think, more than any of my technical skills. So that was my whiteboard moment, and I apply that to kind of anything now. Like I don't go into anything thinking I'm the expert in the room, because I'm certainly not. I'm still immature in my kind of being a Scrum Master.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm still immature as a business owner, but I'm serious about both.
Yeah, well, that's a good way of framing it. You've got to be serious. It's not just a case of handing in your uniform,
Yeah,
doing a whatever course. Could be a locksmith course.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
just turning up and thinking,
yeah. Absolutely.
You're gonna smash it.
And so, I mean, that's the one phrase I could get out of most service leaders' mouths is that smash out. And so I mentioned, I've mentioned to yourself about mentoring service leavers.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's like the sixth kind of service that we offer at MilScrum is.
Oh, really? Do you want to because
Yeah.
obviously I imagine this will go out to.
Yeah, definitely. So it's myself at the moment. So I dedicate an hour minimum a week, whether it's in the evenings or the weekends or at lunchtime, to support one service leaver at a time with their CV development, based on a set format that I was taught.
Yeah.
And then go through some interview techniques, and then help them network and find a job. I've helped 3 people so far, which is really nice and fulfilling and really charges me.
Yeah, yeah. Good stuff.
So I can't commit all my time because I have to pay my bills, but it's free of charge service as a mentorship for short term to get someone into a role that they would enjoy and save them hitting their head a bit as much as possible. But I don't write the CV for them. This is very much like your story. Someone should be able to pick that up and you should be able to talk about your key achievements or your headlines in detail in your interview.
Yeah.
And then so when they write something in their CV which sounds amazing, I'm like, well, tell me more about it.
Yeah, where's your receipts?
And they're silent about it. And they're like, oh, okay, well, you're going to fall on your ass at your interview. So
If you can't, if they can't tell you, then.
Yeah, and they're going to have a whiteboard moment. So we kind of get that out of the way in a safe space with myself. And then we move on to kind of networking and that sort of thing. So that's something it's not going to take up all my time, but an hour a week I think is enough to give back to kind of service leavers that have served our country. So
yeah.
I think it's really important because it is a daunting, you've been through it, I've been through it. It's a daunting kind of process leaving the forces, I think.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it is. Yeah. And it's a good job we've got people like you who can spend their time helping people out.
Yeah.
I mean, what else is next?
I think, as I said, this is my first contract, and I want to make it work. I want it to sing. I'd like to kind of look outside of kind of the public sector eventually, and kind of utilize those military practices and procedures outside of a public sector defense related type of a role. So focusing on a completely different sector like the fitness industry or the medical industry or something like that, I think would be really interesting, to kind of help develop their services or products, and their teams as well.
Cool. And you mentioned the mentoring, MilScrum. LinkedIn, like how if you are willing, if you want people to, if they want to, what's the best way to get hold of you?
Yeah. So I'm just working on the contacts click on my website. So it's not fully functioning at the moment. We should have that by the end of the day.
It will be by the time I put it
by
in
the time
comments.
you put this out, it should be working. So through milscrum.co.uk, if you're a business and you want to reach out, if you just want to say hello and ask some questions about service life to Scrum or Agile, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn, DMs, that type of thing.
Slide into Wayne's DMs. There's the invitation.
Like, follow, all that stuff. But yeah, that's the best way to get hold of me, really.
All right. Thanks for coming on, mate. It's been a pleasure.
Really appreciate having me.
Thanks for listening to this month's episode. If you enjoyed the conversation, please let us know in the comments. And also, tell your mates, like and subscribe. And I'll see you next time.